Hey everyone, Pastor Nathan here. Matthew chapter 7 ends the Sermon on the Mount. And one of the things that is a challenge with that is that this almost like scattergun approach to the end of the Sermon on the Mount. You've got several sort of disconnected sections, seemingly disconnected sections, but they all function to end the Sermon on the Mount well. Chapter 7, the first few verses, it talks about do not judge. And we're not judging because it is easy to get a look at this list and say, aha, I'm doing better than so-and-so on this particular point of the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus is like, no, this is not how you do this. This is a way of humility because we have our own struggles with how the sermon, with the stuff that Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount. Then he talks about we're going to need help along the way. This is also humility. Humility asks, humility seeks, humility knocks, humility looks to the Father and says, I need help along the way with this. Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, we're going to need help following him. We also need to know that the way is narrow and the gate small that enters life. Not everyone's going to follow this way, and there'll be a lot of people who are opposed to this way even. He goes a step further and says, watch out for false prophets. And being a false prophet means that these guys are going to look good and they're going to talk good, but ultimately they're going to be shown by the deeds that they do, which are not kingdom deeds. They're not things that follow Jesus. And then finally he ends with this. He says, the wise person who does these things is the wise person, and the person who, after hearing these things, doesn't do them is the foolish person. So this all functions, chapter 7 functions to end the Sermon on the Mount in a way that says, this is a humble way. It will not be easy. Not everyone will follow it. There will be folks who will try to get you off the way. And then, now that you've heard this, do it. Do these things. Try to do it to the best of your ability. And when we get to the point, in part, is that we can't. Only Jesus does these things perfectly. We fail at one and sometimes every point in the Sermon on the Mount, and more when it comes to our relationship with our God. Ultimately, we have to rely on the cross. The ask, seek, knock portion of it is pushing us towards the cross. I say, we need help. We can't do this. We have failed. We need forgiveness, and we need you to wipe out our sins, wipe out our failures, wipe out our brokenness, and to replace that with the incredible perfection of the one who did do this perfectly, Jesus. And then at the very end of this, Matthew adds something really cool. He says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. Jesus has authority because he's the author of life. Jesus knows what we need to do because he's the one who built us. And he can speak with authority because he's our maker. And I love that, just that little side note, little kind of footnote at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, and yet it's so powerful. So, hope that's helpful for you as we continue to follow Jesus. Next time we're in Matthew 8. Take care.